I told you it was coming. I told you they were going to come back and gaslight us and tell us that critical race theory is not what you think it is. Critical race theory is perfectly fine. Critical race theory is essential. Critical race theory is the truth. Anyone opposed to critical race theory in classrooms is racist. Kids need to learn about this, especially white kids. But we're not picking on white kids. It's just important that white kids specifically know this. But we're not picking on white kids anyway. I have to do a reaction video to this little video by Jesse Mechanic, who thinks he's just too cool for school. He's so clever. He's so clever. He thinks he's going to get a lot of clicks and a lot of likes and a lot of shares, sharing something that is essentially gaslighting and propaganda. But I'm going to go through it step by step and explain why he's way off base. So hopefully next time you find yourself on the receiving end of this kind of gaslighting, you can do this too. This is Nikki Haley commenting on CRT, and that's what he reacts to, and then we're going to react to him.
Not be taught that they are racist. And that's literally what the critical race theory and all of those things are doing is.
Critical race theory does not teach kids that they're racist. It teaches them that systemic racism exists.
Except it doesn't. It teaches them that it exists, but it doesn't tell them what it is. It actually doesn't. It doesn't define systemic racism. It says there's this thing called systemic racism, but it never actually breaks it down, shows any data to support the claim that systemic racism exists by anybody's definition. And what it seems to amount to is an assertion that any outcome that is disparate between Black and white students, or Black and white people, interestingly, only American Blacks and American whites, not European or African Blacks or Black immigrants to this country or anybody else, just Blacks and whites. But any disparity in their achievement in any realm of life is obviously the function of racism. That seems to be, as I can work it out, their definition of systemic racism, and that's how they establish that it exists. Except that's not very scientific, and that's what they're teaching to our kids.
It provides benefits to some while holding others down. It explains structural racial inequality.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't explain structural racial inequality. It asserts it. It says it's there, but it doesn't explain it. It doesn't explain how it got there, why it's still there, who exactly benefits and how, why those who benefit haven't along the way since the civil rights movement or in the 156 years since slavery was outlawed done anything specifically to fix this supposedly obvious systemic racism, and why specifically the schools who claim to be the ones who have to now fix it didn't fix it in all the years since the Civil Rights Act was passed and they desegregated the schools. But according to Jesse, it's the truth. But no, it doesn't explain how it does anything. It just says that it does.
The poor children! We are thinking about the children.
No, you're not. You're not at all. There's nothing about this that is pedagogically sound for children under the age of 18. Children above the age of 18 in college maybe could have a serious conversation about whether this holds any water, and they could debate it if, of course, they're allowed to debate it, which we know they're not because we've talked to college kids who are told you believe this or you're on the outs. But for young children, no, you don't go into a class of kindergartners, even third graders, even eighth graders, and simply tell them there's this thing called systemic racism, and we know it exists because there are these disparities in correlation equals causation, and there you go, we're done. That's not how we teach. So no, you're not thinking of the children. And now he goes on to say, no, not those children, the white children. Well, that's a straw man because literally no one has said that. Literally no one has said, oh, you need to especially focus on the white children. But what we have said is it is really unhealthy to tell one group of children they're oppressors and another group of children they're oppressed or victims. They both suffer in that scenario. And in fact, you are telling the white children between the lines that they're superior. And that if they don't step aside, sit down, hold themselves back, or in some other way self-flagellate or feel guilty, that those poor Black children, they just won't get ahead, that the bad things, they are now held back by the white children. A 6-year-old who's white apparently can hold back a 6-year-old who's Black simply by his or her mere existence in the classroom. But no one has ever said that.
How are they supposed to go on with their lives knowing about these atrocities?
No one has said that either, Jesse. Literally no one. I don't know who you think you're mocking or making fun of, but why don't you? If this has actually occurred and people have actually said that, then bring the clips. Show the clips of people saying, how are they supposed to go on with their lives? No one has said that. This is a straw man argument. You can't find video for it. You can't find anything in writing for it because no one has ever said it. Literally no one, even in the legislation they're trying to pass, has said that they shouldn't be taught about atrocities. They shouldn't be taught about slavery. They shouldn't be taught real history. No one has said that ever. You're lying. Straight up.
All of this whining about white children having to learn about the horrors of systemic racism.
No one is whining, Jesse, and no one has complained at all in any tone of voice, least of all whining, about anybody learning about the horrors of racism of the past. Okay? Nobody.
Of systemic racism, while their black and brown classmates are experiencing the horrors of systemic,
said the white man. So their black and brown classmates are experiencing the horrors of systemic racism. Again, could you please define systemic racism as you understand it? Explain what those specific horrors are. And why don't you tell all the black students in America, who you apparently now have stereotyped that they're all experiencing horrors. Every single one of them, even the middle class and upper class ones, are all experiencing these horrors simply because of their black skin, but you're not the racist. Okay, we understand. Thanks, Jesse, for explaining it to us, that the white children need to be made aware that they are not experiencing any horrors at all in their lives. Their lives are peachy keen and all the black kids are suffering. Thanks for stereotyping everybody. But again, we need to learn how to not be racist, like you.
might be the most pathetic piece of agreement theater I've ever seen.
Except you've never seen it. Except you've literally never seen it. I challenge you to go ahead and find me clips. Find me clips of anyone saying that that's their issue, that they don't want the precious little white children to have to be exposed to the horrors of racism of the past, present, or potential future. Show me. Show anybody a piece of evidence. You can't because it doesn't exist. You are literally manufacturing this argument out of nowhere.
Kimberly Crenshaw, one of the founding scholars of critical race theory, explained it as, quote, a practice, a way of seeing how the fiction of race has been transformed into concrete racial inequities.
Technically, she was the founder of intersectionality, not critical race theory. She's just in there underneath the umbrella of critical race theory, but she just refines it so that now you can have all kinds of more virtue if you have lots of intersections where race and gender and sexual identity and so forth crisscross, as well as whether you have a disability and so forth. Okay? So no, actually you've got that wrong. And as far as, it's just a practice. It's just a way of looking at things. Okay, well, if it's just a practice and it's just a way of looking at things, then what exactly does it have to do with the horrors of systemic racism and why you need to teach this to little kids in school? This sounds like something you would do in a college or a university to have a discussion about, let's take a look at how these things happen and so forth. Why do kindergartners need to learn this? How does this help children learn to read and do math? I'm curious. Where does that factor in, Mr. Educator?
Transformed into concrete racial inequities. And then it's, quote, an approach to grappling with the history of white supremacy that rejects the belief that what's in the past is in the past, and that the laws and systems that grow from that past are detached from it.
Literally nobody says that. Literally nobody says that the systems and laws that grew from the past are completely detached from the past. There are just social scientists and teachers and parents who disagree that the only answer is critical race theory, that the only explanation for disparities or how those systems are still potentially maybe racist or not is critical race theory. You think you have the answer. And guess what? Social scientists, real scientists, don't think they have the answer. Never. That's how we know you're full of crap, because you claim to be the foremost authority on all of this. You have the answer. It has grown out, therefore it is part of the present. No, it's one avenue to look at. And again, little kids are not social scientists. This is not their responsibility. It is not their job to right the wrongs of the past, present, or anything. It's their job to go to school and learn to read and do math and actually get along with each other and make friends. Yeah, it's not their job to worry about the sin they can't wash off because they happen to share a skin color with people in the past who did some horrible things. And that is exactly what critical race theory teaches.
Are detached from it, end quote. We can't just disregard the past. The seeds may have been planted long ago, but what has grown from them is still flourishing.
Says you. Okay? A, no one is trying to disregard the past. So again, more false premise. False premise, total straw man argument. Secondly, what does this have to do with teaching K through 12? What does any of us, and the seeds have grown and they're still flourishing? It's a lovely little metaphor, but show me some data. Show us data. You don't have any. This is just academic theory. It's not even theory because it's never been tested. There is no data to support this. This is a model at best. This is somebody going, you know what, I bet that because they were formed in the past by people who had racist beliefs, that there was some racism that carried forward to the future. Okay, so go find it. Go find it, test it, do some experiments, do some quantitative and qualitative research, and then come back. Oh, guess what? You've had like 40 years to do that and haven't been able to do it. And you know why? Because you never felt the need to do it, because you knew that in a truly anti-racist society, which we are, very self-reflective and self-conscious society, that people would just hear, oh my God, we're still racist, and go, no, not me, and jump right on this, which they have done without questioning it. So now finally parents are starting to say, why does my 7-year-old, my 8-year-old, my 10-year-old need to be learning this and responsible for this? Because it's causing them a lot of stress to be told that they are no different and carry around with them all the same guilt and all the same shame as a person who may have created a system 156 years ago. And you have nothing to back up your claims that you are making right now. It's still flourishing. Show us. Show us where it's still flourishing, Jesse.
This seed's being planted right now. Critical race theory.
Oh, and there's seeds being planted right now. Again, I want to see those plants. Where are those little seedlings?
Critical race theory began in the legal profession with the goal of identifying and addressing the inequities therein, and it has since expanded as general societal awareness has grown.
Blah, 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 blah. Yes, we've heard this little gaslighting argument for the last, several months, where people are doing the Mott and Bailey of, oh, you found our lesson plans in which we segregated half the class and told them to identify how white and oppressive they are, even though they're little kids. We told them to reject their parents and reject everything they learned at home because they need to atone for this horrible racial guilt that they have. Oh, you found our lesson plans. You found our slides. You don't like this. Your kids are coming home all confused, wondering if they're actually even the gender their parents have told them they were since they were, 3 years old. Oh, you found that stuff? No, it was found in the legal profession. It's just this academic theory that we toss around when we want to figure out society's woes. You're full of crap, Jesse, and we're on to you.
Taught under this rather broad umbrella is perfect? Of course not. But the general mission should absolutely be embraced and supported.
Why? What is the general mission? What exactly is the general mission? Because if the general mission is to end racism, I've news for you. You can't. You cannot end racism. You can't end racism by teaching racism or racial essentialism. That's not how it's done. You end racism by simply treating people equally under the law consistently and holding people accountable consistently when they don't. So if there are brutal police who are not obeying the law, you hold them accountable. Okay? I'm with you there. If there are politicians that are not doing what they're supposed to do, you hold them accountable. If there are teachers who are doing it, you hold them accountable. If you think that the way we fund schools is inequitable and we should be doing it differently and not based on property taxes and not busing people across town to schools that are not in their neighborhood, et cetera, and so forth, by all means, let's look at that. But before you do that, you need to justify why is it that we compare academic results across races? Well, tell me what the inherent value in comparing a black child to a white child's achievement is, all by itself. Why don't we just look at all the children against the state standard and say, okay, X percentage of kids are not doing so well and get down to them as individuals? Because guess what? We can only help them as individuals. You can only help a kid read as an individual. You can't help a group of children read better. They're all going to be a little different, need something a little different. But you know what? A public system can't do that. But rather than own that and own the fact the government schooling is a total failure and we need to completely restructure it from the ground up, no, can't do that. We start comparing across race. We have something easier to blame than the teachers and the system and the government that put it in place. That's your systemic racism, buddy. That right there. Expecting less of the black kids than you expect of everybody else. That is what we call the soft bigotry of low expectations and an easy CYA for people who don't want to deal with the real issue by calling it systemic racism. We're done. But you're not actually helping anybody.
Mission should absolutely be embraced and supported. And this push now to make teaching lessons like this illegal should be incredibly concerning.
No, it should be incredibly concerning if we can't do it, because teaching lessons like this, and I love how you don't exactly explain that the lesson that's being taught in the class is nothing that you just explained. And even if it were, it's completely inappropriate for young children. They have no idea what you're talking about. This is like a college level explanation, but the lesson plans, sir, if you actually looked at them, are horrific. They are segregating kids. They are putting them into affinity groups by race and gender and sexual identity and so forth, sexual orientation, whatever you want to call it, at younger and younger ages. This is completely inappropriate. It's tantamount to grooming and abuse, actually, if you talk to social and child psychologists. This is not okay. And you think it's incredibly concerning that we want to outlaw segregation in the classroom, that we want to outlaw treating people differently based on their race? You think that's concerning? Okay, interesting. That's an interesting take. Okay.
This term has been entirely weaponized on the right, but again...
Oh, weaponized on the right, except that the vast majority of people right now fighting it are actually liberal. They're centrist liberals. Every single person who is really super vocal on this is a self-proclaimed liberal. People on the right, as you want to lump everybody who is against segregation into one big bucket, haven't even really woken up to this yet, but I promise you, you don't want them to. If you're worried about people on the far right, I would say don't do this, because this is the kind of thing that's going to cause a backlash of exactly those people, and people who are into classical liberalism, like me, don't want that. So we would like you to stop gaslighting and lying to people in a big fat hurry before things really get ugly.
Right, but again, at its core, all it really is teaching about systemic racism, which they don't want to happen because exposing the truth is a threat to their power and their very identity.
Interesting. Let's see. We have the entire educational apparatus run by Democrats. All the teachers' unions, Democrats. They give overwhelmingly to Democrats. The government right now is run by Democrats, both House and Senate and the president. Okay? You've got the largest, most populous states in the nation run by Democrats. And you want to maintain that the right has this power they don't want to lose? What power would that be, sir? We don't have the power over education or the universities or anything like that. I shouldn't even say we. We as in free-thinking people. I'm not even going to say the right. Everybody who is right-thinking. Everybody who has their head screwed on straight. The people who have the power right now are people like you who want our kids to be illiterate. Absolutely illiterate. Do you even know the percentage of illiteracy right now in America? No, you don't. Of course you don't, because you're not even the least bit concerned about it, because you're too busy trying to weaponize racism and the race card against actual common sense and reality. But keep going.
Exposing the truth is a threat to their power and their very identity. My history education, and probably yours, was whitewashed, softened, sanitized.
No, I'm 55 years old. I could probably be your mother. And no, it was not whitewashed, sanitized, or nationalized. Not even a little bit. And I was a kid in the Reagan years, okay? I actually voted for Reagan for his second term. And I can assure you I learned about Black Wall Street, Tulsa Massacre, the Trail of Tears, the internment of Japanese, turning away refugee boats, by the way, full of Jews who went to their deaths, the Holocaust, Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Shall I go on? We learned about all of it. Slavery, you name it. The good, the bad, and the ugly. So you're lying even about your own education. Prove it. Bring receipts.
With the myth of American perfection.
No one believes in American perfection. The myth of American perfection is a myth that you just created for the purposes of your little video, because literally no one thinks America is perfect. We think the ideas and the values that are contained in our founding documents are perfect, and that we have not lived up to them. Even Martin Luther King said the same. Even former slave Frederick Douglass said the same. But definitely you know better than a black man.
Of American perfection. That approach is antithetical to progress. That approach only serves to preserve the status quo.
No, you want to preserve the status quo where there will always be a perpetual underclass of black people that you can exploit for political purposes.
And the status quo is racist as fuck.
It actually is. The status quo is racist as because it perpetuates the myth that black students can't possibly succeed without all kinds of help from their white saviors like you, which is a lie, which is an absolute lie. Actually, their performance was better before we desegregated the schools and decided to get all in the white savior business and the white guilt business. So the status quo does suck, and it probably is racist, but not the way you think.
Look, a lot of you folks are petrified of the truth.
No, we're not petrified of the truth. We're petrified the truth is never going to get out because you guys are going to keep hiding it and burying it and not whitewashing it. Sorry. I don't know, removing it, eliminating it, censoring it, canceling it to the point where nobody remembers anymore what the actual truth is, and you rewrite history completely to suit your political ends.
Up racism in America always provokes pushback like this. Always.
No, it doesn't. Always. We passed the Civil Rights Act. It happened. Brown v. Board of Education was a thing. It happened. We used the military to desegregate the schools. No, it doesn't always happen. We made huge progress in this country without you before you were born. We didn't need your help.
So please, the next time you're about to whine, instead, shut up.
Shut up? I'm not going to shut up. You can't shut me up. I'm going to keep talking and talking and talking and talking until I'm blue in the face. I'm going to make 100 more videos just to spite you, you little twerp. Because you know what? You're a liar. You're a liar. You're a gaslighter. And you are the problem. You are exactly the problem. Everything that's wrong with education right now could be summed up in this video. You're so interested in kissing butt to your woke masters and getting clicks and retweets and whatever, and aren't I clever, and I stuck it to the white people. Guess what, buddy? You didn't do anything. You didn't move the ball forward at all. You haven't improved race relations one iota. You've lied to a bunch of people. You've tried to intimidate a bunch of people out of actually defending their own kids from something that is a toxic ideology and is not going to help a single black child get ahead. Not a single one. Okay? You have no idea what you're talking about, and you need to shut up. So, that's my reaction video. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.